For months, America's national security interests have been put on hold and undermined by a group of extreme pro-Putin Republicans who are determined to stop us from standing with our allies across the world, and in particular, the Ukrainian people, who have fought bravely and valiantly in defense of principles like democracy, freedom, and truth. The time has come for the House of Representatives to act, and act decisively in America's national security interests. This is a Churchill or Chamberlain moment. We can either confront Russian aggression in defense of democracy, or we can allow the pro-Putin extreme MAGA Republicans to appease it. As events have shown, in modern world history, appeasement of aggression gets you nowhere. When this was tried at the beginning of the events that precipitated World War II, it led to nothing but more than 100 million people losing their lives or being seriously injured as a result of the events of the Second World War. We cannot repeat that mistake. We have to make sure that we stand with our democratic allies in Ukraine, in Israel, in the Indo-Pacific, and surge humanitarian assistance to Palestinian civilians who are in harm's way in Gaza through no fault of their own, and civilians who are in war zones all across the world. And that's our intention, to get that done over the next few days. I yield to Democratic Whip Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Leader, and thank you for putting this moment in the historical context that it deserves. We are here at a make or break moment for Ukraine, but also for the standing of the United States. Are we an ally that will come to defense of another sovereign democracy? Are we going to stand up at this moment and say that we stand together with Ukraine and against the aggression of Putin? And we know the forces across Russia, but also across the aisle here in the House of Representatives that want to see Putin be successful, that have been holding up this vital national security funding for months and moving the ball as they do it, moving the goalpost. So today's the day, and we stand ready as House Democrats to vote for our national security, to vote to stand with our allies across the world and send the message that we stand behind our word, we stand with our allies, and we stand firmly for democracy. That is how we are going to continue to evaluate this package, and that is how we will vote on this package when it comes before us. And with that, I am proud to yield to our caucus chair, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you, Whip Clark and Leader Jeffries. America must maintain its role as a leader in the free world. House Democrats for months have been asking to vote on this national security supplemental, key aid to Israel, Ukraine, humanitarian assistance, and Indo-Pacific priorities. It is so important that we support those efforts. Speaker Johnson has to tune out the extremism on his side and give us an opportunity to vote for these national security imperatives. With that, I'll yield back to the leader.
Questions?
Mr. Jeffries, if this bill makes its way to the floor, the Speaker has been threatened with a motion to vacate. If it does make it to the floor, will House Democrats work to protect his speakership?
We're in the process right now of evaluating the substantive legislation that will be before the House, we have a caucus meeting that is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll have a conversation about the substance. We'll be able to go through the various bills that are going to be before the House. Once we've made a caucus-wide decision about the substance, then we'll be able to talk about the process and what may lie ahead. But we don't want to put the cart before the horse.
Mr. Leader, pending what is said in that caucus meeting, are you prepared to allow Democrats to vote on the rule on the House floor, but also potentially in the Rules Committee, given that Speaker Johnson's struggling to get those votes?
We haven't had that conversation as a caucus, and so we're going to have a discussion about the substance, our national security priorities. We've made clear, as both Catherine and Pete have said, that we're committed to standing with our Democratic allies and doing what's necessary to support America's national security interests. That's what's at issue. Because on the other side of these conflicts that we've talked about, whether it's the Chinese Communist Party, whether it's Iran, whether it is Russia, these are enemies of democracy, freedom, and truth. These are individuals, these are countries whose values are anchored in autocracy, in tyranny, and in propaganda. And so I think this is a heavy moment for the Congress, for the country, and for the free world. And so we're going to evaluate whatever process hurdles are going to be in front of us through the lens of that heavy moment and the recognition that America has to always stand on the side of values like democracy, freedom, and truth.
Leader Jeffries.
I'll go back to this side.
Leader Jeffries.
Yes?
Have you been in touch with President Biden or the White House about Speaker Johnson's proposal?
We've spoken regularly with President Biden and the White House over the last several weeks, the last several months, and the last several days. Of course, you all know that President Biden convened, I think, a very important conversation with the 4 legislative leaders on Sunday to discuss a possible path forward. And we'll continue to be in conversation with the Biden administration moving forward. Yeah.
Is it correct that Democrats have blocked liquefied natural gas provisions from being in this, and if so, why?
You can evaluate the legislation in the same way that we can evaluate the legislation. We've been clear that the issue that is in front of us relates to America's national security and standing with our Democratic allies, and extraneous matters have no place in anything that we consider over the next few days.
Do you have reaction to today's impeachment trial?
I think and I'm going to yield to Pete and Catherine on this as well, but what's taking place in the Senate right now is nothing more than a political stunt that has nothing to do with lowering costs for everyday Americans, growing the middle class, making sure that we promote safe communities all across the land, defending democracy, fighting for reproductive freedom. What's going on in the Senate is a charade. There's no justification, no foundation, no basis for pursuing the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. This is all part of the Marjorie Taylor Greene show. And it's unfortunate that she's driving the agenda on so many issues as it relates to the extreme MAGA Republicans in the House. Catherine?
Yeah, I would add to that that what we're seeing in the impeachment that is now in the Senate is directly related to the House GOP. And as the leader said, they are operating under the direction of Marjorie Taylor Greene and the most extreme factions of their conference. How do we know this? Because when the president came together and was told that they needed immigration reform to be tough and on border security in order to pass this national security package, the president did just that and forged an agreement with Republicans, a bipartisan agreement in the Senate that was rejected by the House GOP before they even saw the final text. They have said the quiet part out loud. When it comes to immigration, when it comes to fixing our broken system, when it comes to making sure we're stopping the flow of fentanyl and that we have order at our border, they're not interested in solutions. They are interested in continuing this as a divisive political issue, full stop. They've shown us their hand, they've been clear, and what we're seeing in the Senate is an extension of that policy.
Okay. Next question?
Senator Jeffries,
Okay, yeah.
have you spoken to Speaker Johnson in the past 48 hours about this plan forward, and has he asked for Democratic support to pass the national security?
He has not asked for Democratic support. We are in regular communication, as is always the case every week that we're in session about the legislative agenda, and we're working through the substance. We have made clear that until we are able to evaluate the substance of the legislation that's going to be before the House, we're not in a position to determine how exactly we're going to proceed.
President Biden has said he supports this bill. Ranking Member DeLauro has said she supports the bill. What are you still sort of waiting to figure out, waiting to work through, that you're sort of not willing to say your position on it yet?
A conversation with the House Democratic Caucus, because you have the leadership of the House Democratic Caucus, and we don't get ahead of our members, because on all issues, particularly ones of great significance, though we may have a perspective, we want to have that conversation as a caucus, as a family, as a team, so that we can continue to emerge unified as we've been throughout the entirety of the 118th Congress.
I know you have to speak to your caucus, but do you see an instance in one that you could let this bill fail? These bills fail? Do you see an instance in that happening with Biden supporting it, with Democrats supporting it?
We are not going to allow America's national security interests to be undermined. So figuring out the precise contours of the path forward remain in front of us. But our top line commitment is ironclad. We are going to make sure that we stand by our democratic allies in Ukraine, in Israel, in the Indo-Pacific, and make sure that we secure the humanitarian assistance necessary to surge into Gaza and other theaters of war throughout the globe.
Do you have a reaction to the Speaker bringing a border bill along with all this?
I don't. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Big Bird, as you can see, we've been joined by Senator Cupid Stunt. Can you just show us how you can be the adult after the silly tweet they sent you?
You can send somebody a virtual hug. How about that?
Big Bird, as always, Senator Cupid Stunt doesn't seem to take anything anyone says, which is wise, seriously. Changing subject again, let's conclude. We have some video of Senator Cupid Stunt trying to dance. Big Bird, you like to dance, yes?
Well, Tony, you have to get up and move. Yeah, so Abby and I, we have virtual dance parties together, and we have a lot of fun. We just kind of move and shake.